Start your week with a triple shot of good vibes. This is the Project Joy podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. Thanks for joining me. And now it's time for this week's story of joy. I am really looking forward to something coming up here soon. I currently live in Alabama, and one of my favorite things about living here is that we have really good produce. We have really good seasonal produce. Now, I often complain all the time. I complain all of the time about living here because we don't really have a lot of seasons here. We don't have clear seasons like I had when I grew up in New England, and it's it's one of those things that has been really frustrating for me because I don't handle the heat very well, and of course it's very hot most of the year here in Alabama, and so I try to sort of get that seasonal feel by the produce here in Alabama, and I love the fact that strawberry season is coming soon. There are churches here that do strawberry sales for a fundraiser, and I will literally get pallets of strawberries, and I will sit and with my kids I will process them and cut them up, and we okay, let me just back up and be honest here for a minute. I don't process a lot of them. I sit there and eat while I'm processing them. This is why I don't go to blueberry picking or strawberry picking or anything, because by the time I'd be done, I would have nothing in my bucket, and they would be like, Jessica, what were you doing out there all day? And I would say nothing. With the strawberries all over my face, that would be how that would go down. But anyway, I do eat a lot of them, but we do process a lot as well. And I cut up a lot. I make jams and cut up some for smoothies and make lots of different things with our strawberries. And I love the produce at different times of the year. I love watermelon season. And then when we have the farmers market here, I get big boxes of peaches and do the same thing with those, aka eat the most and then process some. But I just love the different seasons of produce, and it makes me feel like things are more seasonal here than they actually are, and brings me some joy in that. It was never intended for me to be here as long as we've been here, and my heart really lives with having grown up in New England. It's one of my favorite parts of my upbringing. I love that part of the United States in New England, and specifically Connecticut. And it's just beautiful, and it's very seasonal in that when it's spring, when it's summer, when it's winter, when it's fall. And so it's part of that choosing joy thing. If you're in a space, a place, a circumstance that you don't always may not like or appreciate in the moment, if you feel like, if you're choosing not to get out of that space, that place, that circumstance, for whatever reason, just know that you have the choice to find the joy where you're at. And for me, being in Alabama, even though it's not my absolute favorite place to be, I find so much joy in the fact that we have amazing, juicy, delicious produce here, and strawberry season is coming. We'll be back in just a minute for more Project Joy podcast. Attention coaches, are you ready to get 10 or more paying clients every month without spending hours a day on social media, running ads, knowing tech, or begging ever? Then maybe it's time for you to consider starting a podcast. You need to talk to my friends Adam and Shoshana Chaim today over at the Vegan Podcast Academy. You can find more information at veganpodcastacademy.com, and be sure to tell them you heard it on Project Joy. And now back to the podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Project Joy Podcast. Today is episode 8. I can't believe we are at the end of February for this episode, and we've been doing this for 2 months. 2 months. I don't know where time goes. I have no idea. But I'm really excited because I've got the second episode in my Joy and Stories series today, and that means I am welcoming a friend, a colleague, a mentor, a client. This is one of those people that fulfills a lot of different roles in my life, and I'm so thankful for that. So today I'm welcoming on the show my friend Shoshana Chaim. She is Canada's plant-based health and wellness expert. She is an executive with ASEA Redox, and she is one half of the very popular Plant Trainers podcast. Everybody welcome Shoshana Chaim to the show today.
Thank you, Jess. I am grateful for being here, and it brings me a lot of joy to be here. And you're right, we do have that very overlapping relationship where you're a client and a coach and a friend and a colleague and all those things together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fun when that happens. I mean, I don't imagine that happened as much before this social media thing that we're doing these days, but I love it. It makes it fun and complicated sometimes, and still fun and joyful. So that's good. That's good. I'm really excited to have you on today because, like I said, we've got all these different facets to our relationship, but I'm always excited to listen to like what actually brings you joy in your life. Like, share a story with me, share a moment, share a sentiment about joy in Shoshana's life. So I'm excited to listen to you chat about that today.
So if it's okay, I'll just start with my reaction to when you first invited me onto the show. And it's kind of like, what brings me joy? And, part of you goes nothing and part of you goes everything. And it really depends on the mood that you're in. And joy, when people say, how are you today? You might say, I'm happy, I'm excited, but joy is not normally the answer. You don't normally answer joyful. So I really had to think about, well, what does joy mean, and what do I want to convey, and what do I want my meaning of joy to be, and then what fills in there. And I think I just need to go back to a time in my life where there was no joy. Like, there was no joy, but at the same time, there was also no sadness or no anger and no anything. I think just being in a place of anxiety and depression, being on too much medication, left me in a place of nothingness where I couldn't cry at sad movies. I didn't feel overly anxious when my kid would fall and scrape their knee. So having been in a place of nothing really makes you appreciate joy now. And I think that I'm in a place where I could say, when I'm angry, that's still joyful to me. And when I'm sad, that's still joyful to me, because I can feel. I'm here to feel. I'm here interacting with other human beings who are sharing in these emotions with me. So all of that is really joyful. But I'm sure a lot of people are saying, okay, Shoshana, tell me a story. So I love getting scared. It's really, I mean, not scared in the bad way, not these, thoughts of not having enough or anything like that. But that whole feeling of when somebody says boo, and you jump in the air and your feet leave the ground and you scream and maybe even pee a little bit, like, that's the best feeling in the world to me. And I don't know when it happened, but a little while ago, my daughter kind of picked up on the fact that I get off on getting scared. Like, it makes me happy. It makes me joyful. It puts me in a good mood, and it helps me spread positivity and joyfulness to other people. So she came home from school one day, and I think I was even on a client call, and she snuck up behind me, because my kids know that if it's pretty quiet in the house when they get home, just, give themselves a snack, wait for mom to come around. And she snuck up behind me and she went, bah! And I jumped. I must have jumped 3 feet, like, out of the air, and I screamed. And I think she didn't know what to expect. I don't think she knew which mummy was coming next. Was it going to be like, pick her up and spin her around? Or was it going to be, don't bother me when I'm on the phone? Or Or was it just going to be like, oh my God, is she going to drop dead of a heart attack? I think she really didn't know what to get, but I just laughed, and I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And then she did it again a week later. And it's getting to the point where I almost expect it now. But I love the fact that she is doing it because she sees the joy that it brings me. And I'm able to, without doing anything, reciprocate that feeling back to her. And she feels joy out of saying, I know what to do to make mommy happy, and I can do it. And then she's spreading it to the other members of the family, and they're kind of spreading it to each other as well. And it's just really nice to be in a situation where we're thinking about other people's feelings and how to build them up, how to make them feel wonderful, how to help everybody just be happy. And of course, if scaring you really scares you, your reaction is going to be different and people won't continue doing it. But I just love that she's taking the interest in me because I give so much to them to try to make their days good. And the fact that she's doing back to me says a lot about her as a child and her love for me.
I love that. And I actually talked about that a little bit in episode 6, which at the time of this recording is not out yet. But, I had to talk a little bit about love and relationships going into, because that episode comes out the week of Valentine's Day. And that holiday is such a, it's a love it or hate it kind of holiday. But I wanted to talk about it because I mentioned the 5 love languages, and I talk about in there, how can it be wrong to like know what your friend or your spouse or anyone in your life's love languages and want to do that for them. Like that's it really does say a lot about your character, and it's a beautiful thing, I think, to do that. I love that you talked about too, experiencing joy in all emotions, because I think that's joy isn't, I don't necessarily think that it can be an emotion in itself, but I agree with you that something that is joyful is being able to experience all those emotions. And so, like, how has it been to find, because I did the episode 3, I talked about joy and grief, which is something that is not easy for a lot of people to do, to find joy when someone we love leaves this world. And so, like, how do you like go about finding joy when you're pissed off, or when you're something other than quote unquote joyful?
I'm not sure that I recognize it in the heat of the moment.
Mm.
I think it's more of a reflection. But one thing that I've been working on for years is gratitude. And I mean, by being a guest on the Plant Trainers podcast, we start the show off with gratitude. Adam and I share our gratitude. We ask our guests for a moment of gratitude. And throughout the shows, we teach a little bit about gratitude. And you can't feel all these other bad emotions when you're feeling gratitude. So I think that I'm training myself. I'm a work in progress. We all are. We might have the answers, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily apply them as often as we should, or we're asking other people to. But I'm trying to train myself to find gratitude in those moments. And when I start to find gratitude in those moments, I think that I could start to find joy in those moments too. Or do I shift my energy from, I'm really angry, I want to take away PlayStation from the kids all day to show them that what they did was really disrespectful. But maybe if I just find something more joyful to do and give them attention, positive attention, and make us laugh and bring our energy up, maybe that's a better option. And maybe I can get us to the point where we can then talk about what happened without people being moody, because when you talk to moody people about what they did, nothing good comes out of that. So if I could bring the energy up and then be like, hey, isn't this better than where we were 3 minutes ago? What could we do next time to skip where we were 3 minutes ago and get straight to this? I don't have the answers, but reflection helps and practice helps.
I love that. And I love that you talk about like choosing choosing joy in the moment. Like, it's very easy. I see posts a lot of times in the spiritual development and personal development world about people being proud of the fact that they match other people's energy. And that used to be me. I used to, point that finger and say, if you come in my house pissed off, well, I'm going to match that energy and I'll be pissed off too. And that's just what happens to me. And it was that, this is what happens to me. This is how it is. This is what I do. And it's somewhere along the way, like you, I had to sort of shift that and say, I'm a work in progress too. Like, there's moments when that does happen to me. But I recognize that I do have the choice to say, okay, do I want to match this energy, or do I want to be joyful anyway, or do something else to, instead of that. And I also, it's funny that you talk about joy in being scared. I can kind of sometimes, I think it depends, like you were saying, it depends on your mood sometimes. I think I think I can kind of sometimes be in the mood for that, but I remember this one time where my kids put a hair tie around the sprayer on the sink, so that when I turned the sink water on, the water would spray right at my face. I was not happy about that in the moment. It caught me at a very, like, I was not in the place to receive the being scared and being bombarded with water. And so I think it's interesting to, like, whether or not I receive joy from being scared completely depends on the moment. So, like, tell us maybe, do you have one other time when you were scared that it brought you joy?
Oh, well, now you're putting me on the spot because I haven't thought that through. And I'm just thinking about all these times that I was scared that really didn't bring me joy. But I'm also thinking at the same time all the lessons that I learned from
Mm.
them as well. But I don't know, like they'll, I'm totally cool with like fake bugs and snakes and all those things. I'm not scared of those things, but when they pop up unexpectedly and you don't expect them, it's not like the same kind of scare like before you go and have, like when you're might have a car accident or something like
Right,
that,
right.
right? It's a excitement and a kind of, what is that? And it's out of place. And it probably does, I'm going to have to go look it up after. It probably does all these weird chemical reactions in your brain, and it's playing tricks on your brain. And if you've ever watched Brain Games, like, do you ever watch that kind of show and you see
Yeah.
people getting scared and then they explain what's happening? I guess I enjoy it. I guess I enjoy watching other people be scared as well. And
That's
that's
so good.
true. Even though they might not find the joy in it, I laugh, and sometimes they laugh with me and very often they don't.
That's all right. That's all right. I mean, it's good to, I think that's such a big thing though, that's part of this conversation, is that everybody finds joy in different things. And I love what you said about, isn't it a beautiful thing that we can find what brings someone else joy and help them experience that more often by providing that joy to them. So I love that. Shoshana, thanks so much for being on with me and sharing a little bit about what joy looks like in your life. And I love all of the little stories that you shared today. And let us know if you are listening. Email me at projectjoypodcast at Jessica or projectjoypodcast@gmail.com and let me know, about the joy that you experience in your life. And if you've ever experienced joy from being scared as well. Shoshana, thanks so much again for being here today. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks. I'm grateful.
Do you have an amazing moment of joy you've experienced in your life? Tell us about it by emailing us at projectjoypodcast@gmail.com. And now, back to the podcast. Up next week on the Project Joy podcast, we are going to be talking about something that's really near and dear to my heart. As I grew up when I was little, faith was a big part of my upbringing. So I'm really excited to be talking to you next week on the podcast about finding joy in faith. So thank you so much for joining me today and for welcoming our second guest for Joy and Stories, Shoshana Chaim. You don't want to miss next week, so please take a moment to rate, subscribe, comment, and share where available. And until next time, make joy a priority in your life today and every day. I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Project Joy podcast with your host, Jessica Dugas. We'll see you again next Monday and every Monday for another episode to start your week off right.